right, Miss Miranda. I mentioned before the recording started that I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Just for the recording, I want you to know that you can answer yes or no as you choose. But understand that should you answer no to any of these questions, the session will be altered to fit those no's. Excuse me. Ugh. I've been up for an hour and I haven't yawned once. Okay. Question number 1. Do you understand that I cannot guarantee that any particular loved one will come through during this session?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. 2. Do you understand that any medical information that comes through about you or anyone you know, living or deceased, is not medical advice from me, Sean?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. And 3, do you understand that any legal information that comes through about you or anyone that you know, living or deceased, is not legal advice from me, Sean?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you very much. I had a client who was a lawyer, and I asked them that, and they're like, "That is you were very specific in your wording." And I was like, "Yes." And they're like, "Did you ask a lawyer?" And I was like, "No, I'm just paranoid." And they're like, "Well, that is very good wording, very specific wording." And I was like, "Glad you approved."
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is not legal advice." And I was like, "Haha, gotcha." Okay, cool. So, all right, Miranda. I always love laughing and being silly with my clients because it makes the session so much better. Is there a particular loved one that you would like to try to hear from today?
Yes.
Okay, just give me the first name.
His name is Marvin.
Marvin. Okay. Immediately, the first thing I think of is Marvin Gaye. Okay. I love names that you don't hear very much, except for like very specific people, and that's a name you don't hear very much. Marvin. Just one. So obviously, I know this is a gentleman, but as I connect to this name, there is this person who steps forward, and I feel like he passed very quickly because he comes in, and there's this, and I see him, and I can feel like my hand being put on my chest, and I get this sense of just, I'm so sorry that I had to go so quickly. I know we thought we'd have more time. There's this feeling of like, he said something about I thought I was getting better, and then a major down crash. Do you understand this?
Yes.
He says, you understand why I have issues with breathing, why I feel tightness and stress in my chest?
Yes.
Okay. Because there's from like right above my stomach area all the way up to my chest feels very, very tight. I feel like it's being constricted, almost as if this person would have had congestive heart failure, something with like or fluid or inflammation in his chest. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Was he a smoker at all?
No.
Okay. Because I keep getting this keep getting this issue with like my throat hurting, as if like a lot of coughing, and I do as I breathe in, I feel. Did he ever work around any kind of anything that if he were to inhale it would be like a chemical or something that would be problematic to inhale?
No.
Okay. I don't know why I get this like burning sensation in my throat as I'm breathing in. Usually that's a sign of like something like that's inhaled, that's problematic. But this could just be something that he felt. But like I kept getting this sense of like Like how you know when you have like a sore throat and you breathe in through your nose, it kind of like feels scratchy on your throat. Like I get this feeling of like soreness all from like my throat down into my chest into right at the top of my very top of my abdomen. Um, uh, Usual signs do not mean they have to always be that way. So I was asked. Um, he says something about how I know you noticed with me before I passed uh, that my will to live just sort of disappeared. He said something about how he went from being someone who, even while sick, had this kind of push, this desire to keep going, and then one day you notice with him where he had no energy, no desire to thrive, and it wasn't even like a conscious decision. And he says something about how he says something about how he noticed that look on your face of this realization that he was probably going to pass soon. Do you understand all this?
No.
Because I want to check what I something that I have. So you understand that he was sick shortly before he passed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand the chest issue, and you understand the feeling of inflammation. You understand and then the going downhill very quickly, even though he thought he was going to be getting better, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because he says something about, I keep seeing him. Keep hearing him say, I saw that look on your face and you were worried. And then I feel like he passed not too long later. Yeah, he's very loud about that. And I don't know. I'm also torn between if this is a husband or a father because he feels very protective of you. He feels very, I should have been there for you. I shouldn't have passed first. But at the same time, there is this sense of him being, um, looking down at you. Like I can't, sorry, I'm having a hard time knowing if it's a husband or a father, because he feels just so protective, and I usually get that from husbands when they're like, I should have been there for you. I shouldn't have died first. And do you understand this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to say more, but you won't let me.
I very much appreciate you not saying more. I just want to make sure that we're not taking it from them being able to give evidence. He he says something about having worked a lot, being how he says something about worked a lot, having hoped that at his older age he'd have time for more family stuff, but then his health started getting bad. And he says something about how uh, he wishes he wouldn't have put off so much until later, um, and been more available to his family. Do you when he was younger and healthier? Do you understand this?
Yes.
Yeah. Because he's sitting next to me. They always sit on my right when they come in, and he says, "I hope they know I did it for them." And I wanted to make sure that while I had my youth and vigor, I could work hard enough and make enough to provide and them have everything that they wanted and needed, whether it was a struggle or not. And then there would come a time when I could retire and really just be present and not have to worry about it because I've worked my whole life to uh, be able to retire. He's like, but then it got to this point that no one ever expects. He's like, and he said something about like I hung my head in shame a bit because he couldn't. There was a period where he couldn't do as much because the health started creeping up on him, and he says that he's he was really frustrated with himself for uh, how much got put on y'all to always got to check on and make sure he was okay. I don't feel like he was invalid. I feel like he was capable of taking care of himself for a good long portion of his health problems. But there is this feeling of like the worry went to him. Like people always like, hey, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Like I feel like people started kind of not babying him, but they definitely started sort of nursemaiding him for a while, which he was not a fan of. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Because he says, he's like, "Oh, they could have cut that bullshit." he's like, he's like, he's like, oh, he's like, I'd like, I'm fine, and then they'd be like, you want me to get you something to eat? He's like, if I'm hungry, I can feed myself. And he's like, uh, he says, but I feel bad because I realized this was just love and affection and worry, and I wish I would have accepted it more, accepted that support and care more than I did. Um, yeah, he says, "Thank you for getting me through so much." Uh, I don't know if he had to be on oxygen at any point, but I keep seeing him fight with either like a nose cannula or I keep seeing him fighting with something like that where he's like, I want to fucking wear that. Um, he's like, I'll say it. I was definitely a pain in the ass towards the end. he says, um, do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Because he's laughing about it and he says, although I'm sure she would say I was a pain in the ass her whole life. And then he chuckles. hate that I'm still torn. I hate that I'm still torn between a husband and a father, because this man has. I feel like this playful husband-wife banter between the two of you, but it also, but a couple comments make me think of dad, and it's frustrating because he's very. I feel the need to tell you that when it comes to his health, nothing was missed. But there is something about as mediums, it's hard for us to explain how we know what we know sometimes, because there's one of the psychic players is claircognizance, which is the clear knowing that something is vehemently true. And there's something that I can't get away from, where I keep getting inhalants or something to do with him breathing in either like asbestos, breathing in something that when he was younger. Did he have cancer?
No.
Okay. Because there's something about where I keep getting this, like, I feel it in my nose, I feel it in my throat, and I keep getting something about an inhalant when he was younger that added to him being sick later in his life. And I don't know why, and I don't know what. Not a chemist, so I have no idea what what chemicals are. And I don't know where or how he would have come into contact with it. But I keep feeling this with him, and this sickness, and this like health issues in his chest. And every time I try to move away from it, it just is like glaringly right there in my face. Because there's something with this man that feels that without this illness, I feel like he could have lived a good bit longer. Do you understand this?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I say this because I don't feel like this man was in his 90s. I feel like this man was 60s, 70s. Like I could feel like he could have lived like another decade had he not been sick.
Yeah.
Because I keep getting this sense of like another decade at least. Because there's feeling of him being, I don't want to say surprisingly young, but there's something about it where it feels the way he was his whole life, quite energetic, quite of a lot of stamina. I feel like he had he not gotten sick, I feel like he would have like I feel like he'd still be around to this day. Which I know is like obviously something I don't want to explain that. Question. Was this COVID related?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Because I don't get a lot of COVID deaths. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, hold on. These symptoms could be COVID. So I had to double check that for a second. Okay. He also wants me to tell you how he says you're doing everything right. He says you're doing everything right for you. He says you need to keep taking care of yourself and not feel like you need to rush to get back to your life. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Because he says you've really been craving this alone time, this being with yourself, but you feel obligated to be there for your family. And you're torn because you feel guilty as if you're being selfish right now. Do you understand this?
Yes.
He says, stop that. He says, you've always been the first person to jump up and run to someone's aid. And he says, that is an obligation you no longer need to feel obligated to. They're grown ass people, they can take care of themselves. He gets up and he starts pacing in front of me, and he's like, "Dear God, she always would do this thing," and he's like, where starts frantically worrying about everything else that's going on in everybody else's lives, and then like a chicken with their head cut off, running around taking care of her body, and I got to bring so and so to this, and I got to make sure they have this, and I got to do this, and he's like, the whole time I'm just like, would you sit down? He's like, you're giving me a headache, woman. This is where I feel like this is the husband, because I don't feel like a dad would be talking to you about this like that. But he says, he said she gets herself all wound up and slip into this like executive dysfunction where I need to do this. No, I need to do this first. And next thing you know, she's not doing anything because she just had a bit of a standstill, and she's just running around from room to room, not actually doing anything, just saying, "Oh, but I need to do this first. No, let me go do this." And he's like, he said it's he's like, I found it annoying if I didn't find it so hilarious. He was like, please tell her to start prioritizing one foot in front of the other and not exhausting herself so much anymore. She doesn't deserve to still be putting so much of her life on the back burner. He says also, tell her she can't have that avoidant personality anymore where she ignores the things that hurt in order to tell herself, I mean, that's air quotations, that she's fine. He says, I'm concerned about how much she swallows and then tells everyone that she's okay. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. She's like, I'm being called out by a dead person. That's bullshit. Okay. She's like, the whole point is that they can't talk back to us. That's why you don't get a reading with a medium. Do you have any questions for him?
It's just, could I have done anything differently to, I don't know, make him feel better or just make him open up more to me?
He says, that was one of the tragedies of our life, was the fact that the more you pushed, the more you were caring and is this a husband or a partner?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Does anyone get weird? He says the more you push, the more you show that affection and that care and that concern, the more I would kind of pull away, or not pull away, but become more steely, because of the fact that he's like, I'd see how caring and nurturing and present you were, and I'd want to be more and more hard, strong, and like okay for you. And he's like, that was a me issue. He says, because I'd see how caring you were, and I didn't want you to be worried, and I didn't want this very soft, gentle person to be burdened by my stuff. I feel like I was a man. I should just take care of it and be okay. He's like, and I tried that, and it really didn't work well. So I just pushed myself back into my work or my husbandly duties, and he says, and it didn't express the fact that I was doing this out of extreme care as much as I would have liked it to. He says, I knew, that you knew I loved you. He's like, but he said, it didn't show like I thought it did in my head. He says, yeah, I could sit here and say that you could have not been so emotionally on me and let me come to you. He's like, but to tell you that would be to disrespect who you are. And he says, you are that emotionally caring, emotionally assertive person who is in everybody's face when it comes to if they're okay or not. He says, and he's like, he's like you're like a little puppy dog when someone's sad and you want to get in their face, like, how can I make you feel better? And he says, and that's okay. He's like, because there's nothing wrong with that. He says, not everyone's going to respond to that, but that's them, not you. And he's like, so no, there's nothing that you could have done that would have been true to you. And he says, and I want to state that because you'd ask me questions and I'd give you very little answers. And I always will be very honest with you. The question is if you could have done anything else. Yes, you could have not been a puppy dog and let me come to you. But to have told you that in life would have been to tell you to stop being who you are. And I loved you for who you are. And so I wouldn't have ever told you that. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Okay. Because he's very matter-of-factly about, like, she asked a question, I'm going to answer it. But I'm like, he's like, I would not have ever answered it like this had I been alive, because I would never have wanted you to feel like anything you did was wrong. He says, she acts all big and tough. He's like, but she's not. He's like, she's strong, don't get me wrong. He's like, but he's like, she's like the kid who gets a paper cut and their eyes well up and they're like, I'm gonna die now. And so he's like, she handled a lot. He's like, but every once in a while, he's like that last straw, and then she's like, my life is over. and he's like, she gets dramatic. And he's like, that's okay. He's like, but I've always been very hesitant to be like, is this the straw? Like, if I do this, will that be the straw, the last straw? And he's like, so she just needs to make sure she's taking care of herself. And that's all he's worried about with you. He's just very concerned that you're gonna, in order to swallow how much pain you're in right now that you're just going to start taking care of for everybody else and never deal with your own hurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Any other questions for him? Or anything else you want to know? Like, doesn't have to be formal questions. Just
I guess just I always just wondered if it would have worked out with us, or we would have ended up being together, or
he says yes, had he not been such a giant pain in the ass. He says, do you understand him having a very militant father?
I honestly didn't know a lot about his parents.
Okay. He says something about he was raised not really. He says, I hear militant, but I get it more in the sense that his father was very this is how a man's supposed to be, like a man's man. And he says, he raised him very stubbornly in the fact that a man has to have their shit together before they take on a person. And he says something about how he says he never really felt like he had his shit together. And so he kept using that as an excuse because he was I won't say terrified, but he was nervous about really taking this relationship where it could have gone and failing in it. There was this feeling of him being acting like a playboy, but he was actually just insecure. I don't feel like he was a playboy, but there is something about where he just feels I feel like he just wouldn't commit fully into it. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of insecurity from him. Because he very much is yes, it would have worked out. It could have worked out had I gotten my shit together. I mean, he is vehement about that. It's his fault. He says, God knows, and he says that he's like, please don't let her think I mean this the way it's gonna sound. He's like, but dear God knows that she was like a puppy dog following me around everywhere. She was all in, she was ready. And he's like, that scared the ever living shit out of me. Because I did not know if I could match that energy. And he says, I did feel bad, I was stringing her along, and it was not. It was that I wanted her to be close. I just didn't know if I could be close to her, in the way that she deserved. And the whole time he's like, I second guessed this when I should have just fucking done it.
Yeah.
And he's really sorry if it felt like you were strung along. That was not. He's very adamant that that was not his intention. there's an older woman who feels like a mother or a grandmother, but I see her sitting in like a rocking chair or like it looks like a rocking chair. And I see you like kneeling on the floor with your head on her lap. And I feel her like stroking your hair and just comforting you. And she says something about feel like her husband passed before her. Because she talked about loss and understanding how you feel about losing someone that she cared about. And I just keep hearing her say that it's just something about how time heals all wounds, but a broken heart is a scar, and they take time to fade. That's got to be like an old grandmother because that wisdom only ever comes from old people. I never get young people who talk to me like that. It's always the old people. You understand who this could be?
I
do feel like she passed at an older age. I don't feel like she was super sick, but I feel like this was like a natural causes kind of passing. And I know it's very specific that her husband died before her.
Yeah, that's the only part I'm unsure about. I can see it being one of my grandmothers. It's just, I guess I don't relate to the affection part with that one.
So I try to remind people that the way the dead act versus how they were when they were alive can be very different. I don't see her giving me a lot of stuff about her life, except for that her husband passed and whatnot before her, and that she passed of like natural causes. I feel her being very understanding of your plight. And so I don't necessarily, I'm not saying that she was affectionate when she was alive. I just see her wanting to validate that what you're going through is going to take time. And I would say that, I'll also say this, most times the bitches that most, like big, I'm sorry to be ugly, the bitches in life are the most caring in spirit because they try to make up for what they did in life.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Because it's like, oh Lord, I was such an asshole. Hold on, let me fix some shit. My apologies, I was a bitch. Because she's very, I see her being very like, you can't sit here and try to repair this. She's like, this is not a tear in a seam that you can just fix. She's like, this is a scar that is going to take time to fade and heal. The wound may already be healed. She's like, but the scar will be there for ages forward. And she just wants to remind you that you can't rush it. But she says the wound is healed, so you need to get back out there and live your life. She's like, and use the scar as a reminder on how to make the choices with make better choices, essentially. She very clearly tells me to tell you, if you want a man to do something, fucking tell him. She's because they can't infer shit.
I thought I did.
And she's like, be frank, be honest, and if they still don't get it, they're not worth your time. Because she's like, because men can't infer shit. Yes, ma'am. Amen. They can't. And as someone who is partly mostly male, because I have a physical body, but I have a mind for woman, I believe. I agree. She says to be a lot more honest about what you want in your life, and don't wait for it. Take it. Okay, Miranda?
Okay.
Anything else I can do for you today?
I guess, I don't know if you know this, but I mean, it's just,
sure.
When we pass on, will I end up with him, or?
So I try to explain this to people, and I every time I get that question, which is quite often, our afterlife is a amalgamation of all the things in our life that we loved and wanted. My parents were divorced. This is the only way I can explain it. In my dad's afterlife, him and my mom are together. They're not. They're happy. In my mom's life, that man does not exist. She says we're sort of like neighbors in the afterlife, where we are friendly, but like she says, in my afterlife, I am very much single, because my mother was very like aromantic, and my dad is happily married because he always wanted a good life and a partner and things like that. And so our afterlife is whatever we want it to be, because we as energy and souls are extremely multifaceted, and we are capable of like being in more places than once. So yes, we are together. I can't tell you what his afterlife looks like beyond like what he gives me. I have had loved ones in spirit, like my mother once mentioned to me that she had a dream where we were all in her afterlife before she died. And even I was there. And so I knew that this was a projection of what her afterlife would have been, where we were all together and happy. But so the answer is yes, ... Like, it's yes, but there's an explanation. Because I try to be as honest and as real about what the afterlife is as possible. Because I don't want to be like, oh yeah, y'all totally together. And just to blow smoke up your ass and make you feel better. I want to give the real understanding of how the afterlife works. And so if you and him were very happy for you, yes, if that's who you want to be with in your afterlife, then that's who it's going to be. You may fall in love with someone and get married before you die, and that be the greatest love of your life. And then that's who you choose to be with in your afterlife. It's about what makes you happy. I will tell you that we are all together in the afterlife. Like, souls are all one. So we are all together in some way. Yes. I know it's a long, convoluted, like, answer, but, like, I'm never just going to be a yes or no person.
Yeah, I guess I just hope that we could be, that he wants to be with me. I don't know, because we didn't get to in this life. So just.
I can tell you that I have never had a loved one come through that didn't love the person that they were coming through for. Mm-hmm. And so this person crossed space and time to come and give you these messages. And that's just a lot of care, a lot of desire to make sure that you're okay, and a lot of love. And so in life, we have things and circumstances and issues that cause a multitude of issues between people that have nothing to do with the love between them. Mm-hmm. And I tell people to focus on that, because if there wasn't love, then y'all wouldn't have been around each other. Y'all wouldn't have stayed close. Y'all wouldn't have kept bouncing back and forth. There was something that kept y'all magnetized towards each other. And that's usually love. Unless you're like a psychopath, and that's called infatuation. An obsession. And that's horrible. But I don't think that was y'all. So I feel it love. And so they wouldn't come through if they didn't want to. They wouldn't come through if they didn't care. They do. So I want you to know that on some level in the afterlife, y'all will be together. Or in another life.
That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. It's never the answer we want, but it's the one they need.
Yeah.
I just want to know if we're going to be together. Yes, in some fact, yes. In some way, yeah.
Well, I guess I just figured because, I mean, he said yes, it could have worked out, you know, and I just, just assumed that it might work out like just some other way, you know.
Life always has a way of working out.
Yeah.
But we just may not know why. I mean, some of the greatest things in life that worked out perfectly were all purely by accident. And that is, in my opinion, the true essence of the meaning of life. That when we try, it often fails, but when we just let it happen, it usually succeeds. And so I think in this life, he was not able to just let it happen, and therefore it didn't work on his part. Not because he didn't want to, just because he was too wound up and too not able of opening himself up. And so in spirit, he won't have a problem with that. And then maybe in the next life, he will.
Yeah. I always it's, I mean, I've had another reading, so I mean, I know he's met my mom up there and everything, and it seems like they get along pretty well. I don't know, but it's just kind of fascinating to, you know, learn more about what goes on after, you know.
It is always fascinating because it's life unburdened. But people don't really know how to comprehend that because we don't know life unburdened. And so, but yeah, it is amazing. I thank you so much for letting me read for you, Miranda. And if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will email this to you to download it as soon as I can. The audio file, when I send it to you, you'll have to, only way to download it is to on a computer. It won't download to a smart device like a tablet or iPhone. So if you have a laptop or something like that, you'll have to do it like that. And then you have 2 weeks to download it before it deletes.
Okay.
So if you need anything, I can recover it up to a month. But so if something happens, you need to download, let me know as soon as possible. And I thank you so much. And I'm very sorry for your loss, but he's okay. He's very happy and he's figuring himself out in spirit. And he does love you. So does your grandmother. And take the time you need to heal, but live your life. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You are so very welcome. Have a beautiful week.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.